That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Awake, the third film from Canadian director Mark Raso, which Netflix will be premiering June 9th, 2021.
This director's other films I haven't seen, right?
Neither have I. Copenhagen and Kodachrome, which stars Jason Sudeikis, and I have heard good things about that.
I like those names. So I was excited to see this because of the trailer. It was giving me Bird Box vibes.
Very Bird Box, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I would say it's along those lines. Certainly more violent, I think, right?
Yes, in ways that don't seem necessary.
We need to get into that. But the basic story is there is a solar flare. So it's modern time. There's a solar flare that occurs and creates some electromagnetic something or other that causes all electrical devices to cease working, and people can't sleep.
It affects their glymphatic system.
Whatever that, I didn't even look up what a glymphatic system is, but
I don't think it matters. We don't get that explanation till halfway through.
So people can't sleep. The story revolves around a woman named Jill, who's played by
Gina Rodriguez,
who I do like.
I do like her a lot too, yeah.
Although I know people have problems with her. Because the review we did for Kajillionaire, people wrote like nasty comments about her. Like, I guess she's done some bad stuff. But I don't know that, so, I just know her in this movie, Kajillionaire, that's it.
Jane the Virgin, she won a Golden Globe for.
That.
She does a voice on Big Mouth.
Oh.
She's also in Annihilation, which also stars Jennifer Jason Leigh, who's in this film.
So Jill has issues with substance abuse. So she used to be in the armed forces, but then had to leave, and now she works as a security guard at a university she works as a security guard at this university, and one of the professors, a character played by Jennifer Jason Leigh,
who they refer to as Major Murphy. So she is affiliated with
military. This doctor was able to get Jill her job. So that's their connection. Okay, so no one can sleep. Jill goes back to the school to steal some drugs to help make money and maybe sleep when...
Did you talk about how it opens?
How did it open?
With a car crash, basically.
Okay, yes. Well, okay. Well, that's integral, but I'll get to it. We find out that... Jill has two kids, an older, teenage boy, and then...
Matilda.
And then Matilda, her daughter, who looks like she's 10, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Ariana Greenblatt, who also has a small role in The Heights.
Oh, okay. Matilda can sleep.
Yep.
So she's a hot commodity. And people... Oh my God, we'll have to get into it, but, the time frame... Because, sleep deprivation causes hallucinations. But the professor in the movie says, this, whatever's happening is accelerating it. So after, a couple days, people are, out of their minds. So the professor has set up a hub where she's trying to do research to see, how can we, cure this. And she says she already has some lady there who can sleep, so they're going to research on her. And if your daughter can sleep, bring her. And initially, Jill says no, because I don't want y'all experimenting on my kid. But then she's convinced by her older son, we're going to die because we're not going to be able to sleep. And then what? Leave Matilda here to fend for herself? So they decide to make the trek, not unlike in Bird Box, where they have to go to this compound. They make this trek to the hub to see about finding a cure. But of course, now it's day 3, day 4, and people are insane. So it's violent zombies running around. Mm-hmm. So they battle all that to get to the hub, and when they get there, they realize that the professor hasn't found any answers. So it's just chaos.
All they've developed is a cocktail which heightens mental acuity, but
reduces the symptoms of hallucinating,
but causes significant neurological issues.
Right. Okay. So it gets worse and worse and worse until we find... It culminates with the understanding that the way to cure whatever has happened to us is if you die and get resuscitated, I guess that'll get your rhythm back in order.
Your circadian rhythm.
Yeah, the rhythm will get you, I don't know. So
the rhythm of the night.
In the beginning of the film, after the solar flare happened and the electricity on everything went out, Jill's car turned off and they got into an accident and like plunged into a lake or something. And Matilda, the little girl, drowned, but was resuscitated by some sheriff's officers. So that's why she was able to sleep. Mm-hmm. And then towards the end, when they get to the hub, the older boy, what's his name?
I didn't write that. He's played by Lucas Hoyos.
That person, he dies from being electrocuted, mm-hmm. and then is resuscitated with like a shock treatment. So he's able to sleep. So the two kids put two and two together that if we kill our mom and resuscitate her, she'll come mm-hmm. back to life. So they kill her, they drown her, and then perform CPR, and she wakes up. The end.
Yeah, basically.
All right.
Yeah, with a nice shot into her pupil, and not unlike Rose Byrne's gasps at the end of Insidious, you hear her coming back to life.
Yeah. All right. Should I just go down my list? So it's made very clear that Jill has a drug problem. What purpose do you think that had to the narrative?
Nothing.
Except that she's separated from her children.
She is, because they're cared for by her mother-in-law.
Who you couldn't tell me wasn't Tilda Swinton.
Yeah,
that lady looks just like Tilda Swinton.
I could and I did. It's Frances Fisher.
I know that it's not, but she looks just like Tilda Swinton.
But Frances Fisher is a notable actress. Like, she's been around. She used to be with Clint Eastwood. She plays Kate Winslet's mother in Titanic. She's in Unforgiven. Frances Fisher is notable. And she's looked the same for years, to be fair. But she plays Doris, a Christian woman, which also, there's a subtext of that which drives Jill to...
Well, that's since you're sitting on that, I think that's probably the creepiest scene of the film is when Matilda, the little girl who can sleep, is at the church, and the priest, who's played by...
Barry Pepper, who you know from Crawl.
Oh, that's right.
He's the dad.
I like him.
He's in a ton of stuff as well.
He's like saying like, let's pray for her. It's just already when I hear like, let's do this, like it's already creepy. And then I for sure thought he was going to like do something inappropriate with her, like try to kidnap her to mm-hmm. figure out how he can cure this. But he's saying like basically they can pray and God will use her as like a messiah to help us. But because, well, all the parishioners are just crazy because they're sleep deprived, but also they're like believing that this girl will save them. So they're like, she can't go.
Let's sacrifice her.
Like things escalate very quickly. Yeah. So I thought that scene was interesting. Yes. But I didn't know like the development of Jill's character is like battling drug addiction and being separated from her kids. I don't know that I needed that for this story. I would preferred more explanation on like, well, let's go to the next thing.
Well, because I think that, I think the mechanism could have played out a bit different and still give us the fact that she's been trained professionally to deal with strenuous situations.
Yes, because that is utilized. Like she has military training, but because of her addiction issues, she's had to leave, and then now she works security. So, she is very capable and competent. And I thought the scenes where she is showing, because she's assuming that she's going to die, her son's going to die, and that her young daughter will be left alone. So she's trying to teach her how to drive the car, how to shoot a gun. I thought those were pretty impactful. Mm-hmm. And I think more time could have been spent on that, like preparing this young girl for living by herself. Because that's devastating to think about. But we didn't. Also, what we don't do is the time frame is very interesting because it happens during the day, the solar flare, mm-hmm. and then that night we see that no one can sleep except Matilda, and then the next day, Jill goes into the school to steal some drugs, and that's when the professor is saying, "Oh, I've set up a hub. We already have some lady." Like, how did the military know so fast that like the ramifications of this solar flare would cause this like affliction, and then we have like research to fix it? That seemed flimsy to me.
It did seem flimsy, but in almost the handful of scenes with Finn Jones, Iron Fist, as one of Jill's colleagues that is selected to go to the hub, but tries to snatch her daughter as well because he understands that she can sleep. All of his lines are that kind of exposition with saying like people, because people wake up from a coma. Like nobody's in a
I thought
coma.
that was cool because we see a scene in the hospital where like people who are in a coma wake up.
Yeah. So there's no conscious and unconscious.
Yeah.
He says they're either on or they're off, which is very. That's all you need to know apparently for this film's purposes, and it would have been nice to have a little more finesse in that regard, because then once you start off on this trajectory, you're stuck. You're stuck on this linear path forward where all the same things happen. They have a run-in with a bunch of escaped inmates and are saved by Shamier Anderson, playing a guy named Dodge, who we just saw recently in Stowaway and also City of Lies. Yeah, and again, like in Bird Box, to get to this final destination where salvation might await. But again, similar to all those other films about the end of times, a dystopic universe when senses are deprived, like the film Blindness as well, from back in 2008.
Okay, the film is quite violent and quite gory, but I wrote down that the gore just seems gratuitous. Like we just see like someone's head gets smashed in. We don't see the actual smashing, but then we see the after effect, and then we like several shots of people who've been shot in the head, shot through the eye. And I don't mind gore, but it just felt very like, well, if you're gonna do that, like go all the way, like show the person, which we do get shots. We like Finn, the character Finn played. He gets shot pretty early on in the film, like right in the back of the head. Mm-hmm. So that was jarring. But then I don't know. Did you agree that the gore just seemed
gratuitous?
Yeah.
Well, it just seems like it's clearly intended for shock value, which I don't know that the film needed, and kind of it does send you off in a different direction or even expectation that the film doesn't fulfill because it isn't that.
And the acts of violence, they're interesting because they do seem, I don't know.
It's a ridiculous scenario that you find people, at least this little familial unit, acting logically within a ridiculous scenario.
That being said, there are some pretty interesting scenes. I think when Jill and her two kids are making their way to the hub, they get stopped like a roadblock, and we see like people hanging and they're still alive. And then there's trouble ahead, and then it is quite violent. I thought that was interesting. I thought the little girl Matilda, like that performance was a little crunchy, especially when she announces like she thinks she's about to be killed, and she's saying like I can sleep.
Yes, some of the.
Okay, good for you, girl.
Some of the the dialogue could have been finessed a little better.
The black man who saved them,
Shamier Anderson.
I wrote down, why did he look so fresh?
He did look pretty fresh.
He looks really good for someone who hasn't slept in days. Mm-hmm. That was confusing to me. Relating to the hallucinations, there were a couple funny scenes, like when the doctor, Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, is like about to she's about to lose it. She starts talking about how she sees spiders everywhere. I thought that was funny. And then also there's a scene where some military person sees like a pine cone.
Grenade!
And it like screams grenade. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, and troubling and darkly comedic actually. I like Gina Rodriguez. I really like Jennifer Jason Leigh. So she's actually
her hair was questionable.
Sure, but I'm glad to
Just saying.
I'm glad to see that she's so busy lately. But she's also often cast in these peripheral roles as like a scientist or a doctor, or like in Possessor or Annihilation even.
Okay. My overwhelming thought about this film is I think it's so compelling, right? Like, oh, some sort of event happens and mankind is afflicted with something, and then we have X amount of time to figure it out, and how are we going to get there? Like, already my interest is piqued, right? And I know I'm like, the story's going to take me somewhere. So even though, like, it was easy to get through this movie because I want to see what happens. But I think it feels like it's an interesting idea, right? Like, I mean, it's just an interesting idea, and I think there are a lot of stories that are very similar. You just have to take solar flare and transplant that with like, some fungus in the ocean, and we can't sleep, but we all, now it's like we can't hear or whatever. But I think...
Well, Shamier Anderson's role has that one bit of dialogue where he's in the back of the car talking about his grandmother. and where she says that all of our problems could be fixed in one generation if we wiped the slate clean and all children weren't privy to the knowledge of their parents. Like everything would be figured out.
Okay. But I don't think that it left a lot to be desired. And I think the ending with just like, oh, so we're doomed then because, I mean, so we have to go around killing people and resuscitating them to like, I mean, that's not going to happen. We're already like day 5 or 4, whatever. So it's like things are looking pretty like what's the word?
Dark.
Bad, yeah.
Dim.
I don't know. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay.
What would you give this movie?
2.5.
I would give it 2.5 out of 5. If you have Netflix, I would watch it. It's entertaining enough.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And if you like either of those two ladies, I think.
I'm tired today. Sorry. Bye.
Bye.